How's it going, everybody? My name is Vexos, and I'm here today to show you my method for finding a comfortable aim sensitivity in Overwatch. So, this is a method that I've ported over from Counterstrike that worked very well for me. And what you're going to want to do is create a custom game, go into settings and modes, and make sure you turn skirmish on. Okay, after you do that, go into maps, turn all off, scroll down to a map like King's Row, and turn that on. And once you have all of that done, it should say on the right here, modes, skirmish, and the maps, King's Row, yada yada, get all that done. Make sure you set to invite only so you don't get any friends that just pop in. Alright. So after you're done with that, go ahead and start. Now, for this, you're going to probably want to get out, like, a pad of paper and a calculator. Something that you can kind of keep track of things with. And for this, I'm picking Tracer just because, you know, quicker to get to the point. She's a pretty straightforward character, I guess. You know, there's no, like, bobble when you run or anything. Which I don't really know if there is or not with, like, characters like Roadhog, but either way. I'd go with Tracer, personally. She's quick, she's good. So, now the method that we're going to use for this is you're going to focus on one of these two bolts and use up all of this space running back and forth and try and keep your crosshair on there. If it's a little hard at first because you're not warmed up, go do like a game of quick play or something, warm your muscles up or anything like that. Now, some of you may have a sensitivity that you feel somewhat comfortable with. Some of you may not be sure at all because you just came from console or, you know, another game or something and you're not really sure where you want your sensitivity to be. So, what you want to initially do is just find something that feels kind of comfortable. For a lot of people, it's usually like between 3 and 5, I think, depending on their DPI. Which DPI is a whole other story. I'll explain some other time. But in this case, what you're going to want to do is get that sensitivity that you're comfortable with. So in my case, I'll just say 3. And you want to see how that feels real quick. Just, you know, if you're able to stay on it. And if it's around the sensitivity that you use, you won't have to do this. You just need to have something to start with. So in my case, if I'm starting with 3, what I'm going to want to do first is take that 3 and multiply it by 1.5. So I'd be at 4.5 now. That feels really high, but I normally play with a lower sensitivity, so it's not surprising. The purpose of this is you're going to find a high extreme and a low extreme, and you're basically narrowing it down to find what sensitivity you're going to be comfortable with. And this is just an easy little method here of trying to figure out if it's too high or if it's not. And I'll explain how to tell if it's too high or not. In my case, this is too high, and you can kind of see my crosshair is pretty much dancing around that bolt because I have to make such minor movements that I'm not comfortable with, and it's very hard for me to stay focused on that because any slight extreme movement or not enough movement is going to, you know, affect how well I stay on that bolt. So I'm convinced that 4.5 is too high. Now we're going to go back to our 3, and we're going to take that 3 and divide it in half. So we'll be at 1.5. Now that's really low. That's lower than I'm used to playing with. So it's going to be uncomfortable at first because you're finding the extremes. These are likely going to be the highest and lowest numbers that you'll mess with while you're doing this, unless you were way off on what you thought your sensitivity should be. So, in this case, I do have to move a lot more, but my crosshair is a lot easier to control. You can see I'm staying on that bolt for the most part. And with these first couple of rounds of this, as we're starting to narrow down, you're not focusing too much on accuracy. You're focusing on consistency, fluidity, and comfortability. Sorry. So I'm convinced that I'm most comfortable between 1.5 and 3. somewhere in that area. Definitely not as high as 4.5 though. So what happens now, 1.5 becomes your low extreme, 3 becomes your high extreme, and you find the average between those two by adding them up and dividing by 2. So in this case, it's 2.25. So this is the in-between area. This is, you know, in between my low extreme and my high extreme. We're going to see how that feels. And as we start working with this more, I'll show you how to tell, like I just did with my sensitivity being too high, how to tell if something is too low. And you can see, I'll explain why, but this sensitivity is too low. Now we'll watch my crosshair. As I'm moving my mouse this entire time. I'm not just like keeping my mouse still and then shifting. This is just me not being able to keep up with my movement speed in terms of where my crosshair is at. I can't move my mouse fast enough comfortably to keep up with my movement speed. And if you need someone to spectate you to be able to tell if you're having that problem, it's kind of an obvious problem. If you can't tell by yourself, though, it always helps to have someone spectate you. But you can see what I'm doing here. I keep having to go a little extra bit with my right hand just to get back on that bolt because my right hand can't keep up with the movement of the character. So that sensitivity is too low. So now instead of 1.5, my low end is 2.25, and my high end is still 3 because I haven't had a reason to go above 3 yet. So we're going to take the average between 2.25 and 3, which in this case is like 2.625, but you want to round up to the nearest hundredth. So in this case, it's 2.63. Yeah. All right. Now, we're getting closer to my sensitivity, which was 2.78. So this should be a little bit easier to stay on. Seems like it. I'm not having as much trouble with the lower. Or as I was with the lower, anyway. But you can see I'm still having that problem where my cursor, or my crosshair, keeps lagging behind my movement a little bit. So even that's too low. Now, you're going to just want to keep doing this until you get to like within, you know, a fraction, I guess. I'll show you what I mean. So the low end now becomes 2.63, the high end still 3. Find the average of that is 2.81 with rounding up. I don't really know. But 2.81, that's 0.3 higher, or 0.03 higher than what my sensitivity normally is. So you can see I'm not really having the lag behind problem too bad. You have to forgive me because I haven't warmed up or anything like that, but in terms of comfortability, this feels a lot better for me. And actually, I'm kind of overextending with some of it. When I have to adjust, I seem to be leading it a bit too much. So for me, it's just a little bit too high. And that's why I liked 2.78, because it's just that slight little bit less that I need for it to be comfortable for me. 2.78. Now in most cases, I'd say, okay, well, 2.81 was too high, so now we're going to have 2.63 as our low end and 2.81 as our high end. Find something in between that. So the middle there would be 2.72. And you just want to keep going with it until you get to like something that either feels so comfortable that you're staying on that all the time, or if you're still not entirely sure and you're still having problems, just kind of keep narrowing it down. And not everyone's going to be the same. You know, like me right now, I'm not nearly as consistent as I normally would be if I were warmed up. And that's why I recommended warming up, because you want to be limber, you want to be loose, you want to be able to do things accurately, unlike me being cold and, you know. So once you get to a certain point, you'll narrow it down to within a couple hundredths of a decimal, and the more you narrow it down, the closer you'll get. Now, if I were to decide that 2.72 was too low and 2.81 was too high, 2.72 becomes the low end, 2.81 becomes high end, and you find the average there, which would be 2.77, which is a fraction away, well, 1/1000th of away from the sensitivity that I normally use. So 2.77 for me, when I'm actually warmed up and my mouse is not getting caught on my mouse pad, that feels pretty good. And yeah, as you narrow it down, the key is to see how accurate you can be with your tracking and keeping it on that bolt. But the big thing that you want to focus on is just making sure that you're not having any of this where you have to make your cursor catch up with the bolt because your mouse movement's not fast enough, and you're not having any of this like flying all around the bolt because you can't keep your crosshair steady enough because your mouse sensitivity is ungodly high. So hopefully this little tutorial helped you guys out. It's not going to be the same exact thing for everybody. Some people are gonna probably benefit from this. It might hurt some other people. In my case, like, I'm a McCree and Widow main, so that really hurts my McCree and Widow game because the sensitivity that I got from this is a whole 0.3 higher than what I'm used to. And I'd practiced for so long with flicking and everything with McCree that getting used to this new sensitivity has been a little bit difficult. But when it comes to characters like Tracer and Zarya, my tracking is much better. I am more comfortable when it comes to just generally getting around, and overall it's a huge benefit. It's just certain characters that you're probably going to have to practice a little more with in the training room or wherever else. Just get used to the whole flicking and everything like that with McCree or Widow or whoever. But for most characters, this should be pretty beneficial, I'd imagine. So hopefully it helped you guys out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.